Hi guys, I'm going to try this again since my last video didn't load with noise or with audio. Let's review one of each section of our Chapter 3 practice test for Algebra 2. So when you are trying to simplify radicals, excuse me, you are essentially looking for perfect squares that multiply to this number. So if I go to 54, I want the largest one possible. 54, 27, 18, and 9 is a perfect square. So I'm going to break 54 down to 9 times 6. And the reason I put 9 first is because the square root of 9 is 3, and the square root of 6. I cannot find another perfect square in there. So this is important. I do have to check if there's another perfect square. Now there is no plus or minus because I did not take the square root of both sides. All I'm doing is simplifying. Okay, so these are for you guys to try. I think number 4, you might have a question. And that is that 3 square root 20 is the same as 3 times square root of 20. So if you're able to take the square root of 20 and get an answer, then at the very end you multiply whatever your square root was with that 3. Negative 81. If we think of this as the negative has an I, and then everything else stays the same, then you can simplify everything. And it's going to be the same, except instead of just like, say, 3 root 6, you'd have 3i root 6. The square root of 81 is just 9. So when you write it, please don't write square root 9. A lot of students do that. It's just 9. So it's 9i. Distribute or multiply is just distributing in, and so you're going to multiply. If I write this out, it's really 3 times 4x, and then this is positive 3, plus 3 times 7. Okay, so this becomes 12x plus 21. When you distribute here, you need to make sure that you don't just distribute the x's and 10 and 3. You have to distribute x times x times negative 3, 10 times x, and 10 times negative 3. You could do a box like this. Okay? X plus 10 and x minus 3. Number 12 is going to be exactly the same as number 11, except there's one more thing you need to remember, which is that I squared equals negative 1. So when you have your trinomial at the end here, you're going to substitute negative 1 into I squared. So when you get like I times negative 6i, that's negative 6i squared. Multiply it to get rid of the I, and then you can combine like terms. Zero product property. Please remember that the goal of factoring or solving by factoring is to make it look like this in intercept form. And then once you have intercept form, solving is just x-intercepts, right? Then I know that I can set x plus 1 equal to 0 and x minus 2 equal to 0. Subtract 1, right? And that's where we used to jump in our heads. X equals negative 1 and x equals 2. Okay. Over here, if you were to like try to jump or change the signs, it'd be negative 1. But the 2 is still there, so it'd have to be 2x equals to negative 1. See if you can do that. This one also splits. Does that help? Okay. Solve by factoring. You are going to find two numbers that multiply to the last one, or C. That's positive 3. And add or subtract depends on what this sign is. So since this is positive, we're finding numbers that add to negative 4 or 4. So that'll be 1 and 3, but 1 plus 3 is positive 4, which doesn't work. So all I need to do is go in and change both signs because that'll give me negative 4. So now I have x minus 1, x minus 4, minus 3 equal to 0. And then we know that x equals 1 and 3. Okay. In this one, you're going to divide everything by something first, and then once you get that number outside, then you can do an x method. On the next page, taking the square root or solving for x means using inverse operations. And this works because you only see one x. Okay, so I'll give you a hint. It's this problem. (3x squared) equals a negative 9. I'm going to divide by 3 now. And we get x squared equals to negative 3. Please do not panic if you get a number that doesn't have a perfect square, right? To get x by itself, we're going to take the square root of both sides, the same as we do normally. And I get x equals, anytime you take the square root of both sides, you have to add a plus or minus. So plus or minus square root negative 3. Well, if you remember from the first page, that negative becomes an I. So really what we have is x equals plus or minus I root 3, because we don't know the square root of 3. The quadratic formula, you are going to be using the formula, which is x equals. There once was a negative boy who was unsure if he should go to a radical party, but the boy was 2 squared and lost his chance with 4 awesome chicks, and the party was all over at 2 a.m. Okay. So this one, you want to be really careful. I saw some people writing a positive here, which affected their final answer, obviously. So I know A is 1, B is positive 6, and C is positive 15. So we know we have a negative 6 plus or minus 6 squared minus 4 times 1 times positive 15. If that 15 was negative, you'd have a negative times a negative, which is a positive, all over 2 times 1. Okay. Negative 6, 6 squared is 36. 4 times 15 is 60, but it's a negative, all over 2. 36 minus 60 is negative 24. You can't leave it as negative 20, square root of negative 24. We know the square root of negative 24 is, let's see, there's an I for the negative, and then 4 times 6, which is 2I root 6. So I have x equals negative 6 over 2 plus or minus 2I root 6 over 2. And now I can simplify my fraction. Right, so x equals negative 3 plus or minus I root 6. Okay, let's keep going. This is going to look a little different than your paper, but I fixed it, and you guys will try 23. So here's our graph. If it equals to 0, anything equal to 0 is x-intercepts, because this is where y equals 0. X equals negative 2 and 4. Well, then we want to find where y is equal to 7, which is way up here. And we need to find these points, but you can't give me the points. It says to solve, right? Which means I want x equals. So you need to follow down to the x-axis, and we know x equals negative 3 and 5. And where does it equal to negative 5? Well, these points. I'm going to follow up, which is negative 1 and 3. Well, that was given one parabola, or one line, and now I want to be finding solutions when we have 2 lines. And so this is different. This is no longer the x-intercepts. These are the points of intersection. Right, so right here and right here only. I do not care about the x-intercepts. I don't care about the vertex or the y-intercept. So it'll be negative 3, negative 8, and 2, comma, negative 3. Okay, last two problems. So when we're finding solutions of systems, we are trying to find where they intersect. So where do the two equations equal to each other, right? Where are they the same? So what we're going to do is set y equal to y, and we have x squared plus 4x minus 13 equals 4x plus 12. And this only works because we have y equals and y equals. If y equals to y, then this must equal to this. Okay. And so your first thing is to always get x by itself, or on one side. So I'm going to subtract 4x and minus 4x. We get x squared minus 13 equals 12. Well, at this point, since there's only one x, we are going to solve by square roots. If there were two x's, you would have to set it equal to 0. And that's what's confusing about these problems. Okay, but we only have one x, so I know that I'm just getting x by itself. And we get x equals plus or minus 5. Well, I'm not done yet. Since we're looking for ordered pairs, I have 5 and negative 5. And I need to find the correlating or corresponding y values. So I'm going to plug in to y equals 4x plus 12. Now I'm going to plug into that equation because it's easier. So I'm going to have y equals 4 times 5 plus 12. And y equals 4 times negative 5 plus 12, which is 20 plus 12, which is 32. And I plugged in positive 5 for that one. If I plug in negative 5, I get negative 8. Try 27. Make sure you get y equals 21 because I might have made a mistake on the answer key there. This one is a little bit scary, I guess, at first. It asks about the flight path of a water balloon. However, when you think about it, it just asks you where does the water balloon land. So if I have a water balloon that lands here, this is my y-intercept, by the way. That's why I drew it up here. Okay. I just want an x-intercept. And so an x-intercept is when y equals to 0. So I'll set 0 equals negative 2x squared plus 22x plus 24. You can solve using the quadratic formula now. You can solve by factoring. You could divide everything by negative 2. You cannot take, you should not subtract 24 and subtract 24 because there are two x's though. Okay, see if you can get a final answer there. And that concludes our selected answers. I will not be posting a video on the rest of these. Okay, I want you to try them yourself this time.